Alrighty, we will be calling to order the Park Rec Mobility Advisory Committee. So I'm just going to do a quick roll call of everybody, and it's just in random order. So, Chairperson, give me 1 second. Jason Burns.
Here.
Chairperson John Hibbs.
Here.
Chairperson Leah Wiseman.
Here.
Chairperson Paul Krebs.
Here.
Chairperson Brenda Lambie.
Here.
Chairperson Jennifer Henkes.
Yes. Here.
Sorry. Chairperson Robert Tommy.
Here.
Awesome. So everybody is present. If we like, we can just stand for a moment of silence and then go to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, our first order of business is picking a chairperson and vice chairperson of this calendar year for us. So the responsibilities of a chairperson is to run the meeting, so pretty much what I'm doing now. They'll acknowledge people. They're usually the ones that sit at the front, are the head leaders, and kind of help run the meeting and make it flow. The vice chairperson is in lieu of, if the chairperson can't make it, they would fill that role. So I can open up the chairperson for nominations if anybody would like to serve, if anybody has anybody in mind. Anyone want to volunteer?
How do you feel about that? I feel like you're already sitting there, so you got the gavel and everything.
Sure, I can do it.
And I volunteer for vice.
Okay. So I just have to officially, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Is there any other nominations for chairperson? Are there any objections to Mr. Burns being chairperson?
Nope.
No.
Beautiful. Congratulations, Mr. Burns.
That's what you get for having
She sat me here, I guess. They seated me.
I apologize. It was really, I just swear, I was only putting people there.
He's the only one that confessed to having experience with this.
And then Ms. Wiseman nominated herself for vice chairperson. Is there any other nominations? Ms. Wiseman, do you accept the nomination even though it was from you? Okay. Is there anyone opposing the nomination?
No.
Beautiful. Congratulations, Ms. Wiseman. Now we have that out of the way. We will go into the committee training. Come on up, Christian Gowan, City Clerk.
Hello, everybody. For the record, Christian Gowan, City Clerk. Thank you all for coming to the first meeting of this newly merged committee. And we'd just like to go over a few things before get into any business regarding your all's role and the Sunshine Law Public Meetings Code of Ethics, things like that. So I'm just going to go through this briefly. At the end of it, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask away. Is this on? No, I have to turn it on. That'll help. Okay, so first off, the Sunshine Law. Basically, this is ensures government transparency, and it applies to all of our state and local agencies, including advisory boards, which of course you all are sitting on right now. 3 main requirements: meetings must be open to the public, reasonable notice must be provided, and meeting minutes must be recorded. So our meeting is open to the public. We try to provide our agendas 5 to 7 days in advance of the meeting so everyone has enough time to review the material. And of course, in this case, Tristan is responsible for taking the minutes. In brief, this is the section of Florida statutes where the Sunshine Law and public meetings lives. any communication between two members of the same board or committee on any matter which may reasonably or foreseeably come before the board must take place at a time and place of which the public has reasonable notice and location where the public has reasonable access. In other words, anything that this committee, could foreseeably be discussing and making a recommendation on, you should not be talking about amongst each other. We encourage you, obviously, to go out, talk to your neighbors, community members, things like that. Bring that back with you. Bring your own experiences and opinions in here. But between the 7 of you, you shouldn't be talking about the matters of the committee outside of a public meeting. We say gavel to gavel. When you gavel in, you're good. When you gavel out, we should stop talking about it. And things that could even come back to the committee. You know, if you make a recommendation, commissions might send it back to you, things like that. So again, a public meeting is a very broad definition. Any discussion between two or more board members is considered a public meeting, which would require a notice and all those things that I previously mentioned. It includes formal and informal discussions and applies to not only in-person communications, but phone calls, emails, text messages, social media, social gatherings, all of that. You know, you don't have to swerve if you see each other in Publix or something like that, but just don't talk about matters of the committee, right? Again, and we just drill on this again, right? Meetings have to be properly noticed. The state says notice should be provided or should be public at least 24 hours in advance. Like I said, we tried to do 5 to 7 days. Just the content, it can vary. You know, this one was I think a couple hundred pages, and then the next one might be, 50 pages. We don't know, but we just like to give everybody enough time to review the material, ask or figure out if they have any questions beforehand, stuff like that. And of course, meetings must be held in accessible locations. The public, again, has the right to attend and observe. Just like at a commission meeting, if a member of the public wants to come, they can fill out a blue public input form. They can submit that to the committee, and they're provided 3 minutes or 5 minutes if they're representing an organization. So the public can participate in the designated times of the meeting, and the meeting minutes are recorded and made available after they are approved, which is usually at the next meeting of the committee. I should note too, all of our meetings, commission meetings and board and committee meetings are recorded, so video and audio, and that's typically uploaded the next day. So it's also available on our website for people to watch the meetings. So it is important to avoid violations, and so we just put together a list of some things to watch for and to generally avoid. So we shouldn't, again, talk about matters during recesses. We shouldn't talk about matters that are going to or could come before the committee before or after the meetings, or between the meetings. Even if we're in City Hall, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't pass notes or whisper to other members during a meeting. You should not talk about board and committee business in social settings with other board members. Like I said, again, if you talking to your neighbors, friends, community members, and bringing that back, that's great. You shouldn't talk about votes, hearings, or actions after the public meeting, as they could potentially come back to you in a different context. Again, we're avoiding emails, texts, calls, social media, all of that between board members. And you also, can't say, go to your neighbor and say, hey, can you tell so-and-so that this is how I feel about this? So we're not using intermediaries or conduits, as they're sometimes called. So the state takes it pretty seriously. There's a number of penalties or consequences of violating the Sunshine Law that range anywhere from civil penalties with fines up to $500 per violation, removal from office, potential criminal penalties, and legal challenges, which can make certain actions taken voided. For this committee, again, you all are an advisory committee, so you're not necessarily making final decisions that would be overturned. You're recommending things to the commission and to staff, but still, it's just we like to highlight all the consequences. So best practices: conducting discussions only in notice meetings, being very cautious with our electronic communications, ensuring that meeting notices and minutes are properly handled. That's in our court. And if you have any questions at any time, consulting the clerk's office, myself or Tristan, whenever you have any questions or in doubt of any of this. So now we'll go to the next thrilling topic: public records. Public records, in our case as a local government in Florida, means pretty much everything we do. All documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, and on it goes, sound recordings that are made while doing city business, right, or the official business of an agency. So the minutes are a public record. If, they go on and on and on. Every person who has custody of a public record is responsible for maintaining that in accordance with state laws and record schedules, and is responsible for producing that record should it be requested. People make public records requests. So if you did, if you were, against my recommendation, conducting, committee business over a text message or your personal email, and somebody said, hey, I want all of Mr. Burns' emails related to the parks and the Parks Committee. So then I would then be reaching out to you and ask you to, provide those emails in response to that request. It doesn't open up, someone can't say, hey, give me his phone and I'll scroll through and see, text messages to whatever, his family or whatever, but it's related to business. But again, we just try to kind of limit those conversations through those means, and when information needs to go out to multiple committee members or staff, trying to put that through the clerk's office first and letting us distribute that just makes it easier for public records purposes. So again, I just cover this briefly. The Code of Ethics is another chapter of the Florida statutes, all very exciting reading if you all have any issues with sleeping. So you all are considered public officers as appointed officials. So there is a long list of things. I don't have to go through all of it, but you shouldn't be soliciting or accepting anything of value, such as a gift or loan or favor, for the purpose of, influencing a vote or action. You shouldn't do business with your own agency. You shouldn't use can't use your position to secure a special privilege or benefit. And, the list goes on and on and on. I'll provide a copy of this. I think you were provided a copy of this, but there are penalties for violating the Code of Ethics as well, which can include, again, removal from office, censure, which I don't know that would necessarily apply, restitution, and a civil penalty of up to as much as $10,000. That's all I wanted to cover right now. So I guess I did write a summary, right? So the Sunshine Law ensures transparency and public trust, compliance, a legal and ethical duty. And if you ever have questions, again, ask the clerks, myself, or Tristan, and we're always happy to help. I think that's really the end. Okay. Does anyone have any questions at this time?
I do.
Okay.
It's sort of like, we talk about something here, but we have to go to the parks to see what the situation is, if we should really do it, if it would fit, or whatever. Can we go with somebody there, or do we have to go isolated and then, because we have several months between meetings unless we could do it some other way, where we can have 6 or whatever meetings.
You're saying, could you go with another committee member basically to the parks to look at something?
Yeah.
Like a fact-finding mission. I'd probably discourage it, because you're probably not just going to look at it, you're probably going to talk about it, and that would potentially come back before the committee. I mean, you can definitely either through the committee or, maybe through our office, encourage. We could say, hey, Ms. Wiseman wants at our next meeting to discuss whatever it may be at this park. And then we could kind of encourage board or committee members, if they wanted to at that point, to go out and look at that issue and then bring that back with them. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend like scheduling going with each other or anything like that.
Okay, so anytime we want to add a topic or we just send it to you.
I
and
would
you send
definitely
it to-
bring it through us, yeah. And I would say and I should have mentioned, for all of our committees or most of them, you all are able to add items to future agendas. This meeting's kind of just getting oriented and kind of getting started. But going forward, if you do have something that you want the committee to discuss, bring it up to the clerk's office. We try to ask that you would provide any of that information that you want included about 10 days before the meeting at least, so that we can incorporate it into the agenda and, you know, keep up with our posting schedule and everything. But yeah, I would definitely recommend just routing that through our office, and if we need to distribute that, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
With these bylaws, like the agenda and some of the information that were in our packet that we have links to, went to my personal email address, right? Maybe this is an ask more than anything. I don't know if it's possible, but can we just get like a Winter Springs email address? So just, it's all kept in private and
Yeah.
not over google.com, which is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
Gmail or whatever. I just,
Yeah.
it's an ask for
Yeah.
security reasons.
Yeah, and that is something we have looked into and done for some of our other boards that they actually require city emails because of financial reporting and things like that. So that's something I can bring that up with our IT department and see if there's any cost or anything associated with that. But yeah, I can definitely
Because there
look
might be
into it.
information in there that's not public information, right? It should be kept
Yeah.
within the city.
Yeah, most of it,
so-
most of the time, right? Most of the time, anything we're sending to you is going to be posted to the website around the same time. Most of the time, if there is ever anything that you know is at least in the beginning for the committee's eyes only, we would definitely, make that very clear in the agenda packet. Most of the time, it's going to be public information, but I do understand exactly, and I can check in with them.
I just didn't know what was public and
Yeah.
private out of that 71-page
Yeah,
thing
exactly.
we got, so that's all.
2 pages.
Yeah,
Yeah, and don't try to print it at whatever, because I
yeah.
have to ask her.
Any other questions right now about any of the Sunshine Law public meetings, anything like that? No? Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
Would you like to take over running the meeting,
Sure.
Chairperson?
So we're moving on to the awards and, oh wait, we already did that one, sorry about that. Moving on to the informational agenda. I don't see any public input on the agenda here, but is there any additional public input that has been added?
No, sir. I've not received any blue forms.
Okay. And I confess, I'm not familiar with what consent agenda versus public hearing agenda is, so maybe you help me out understand.
So consent agenda is when we have smaller items that need just to kind of be approved or looked over. They're usually done either depending on what the board likes. Usually that's where like the minutes go. So it's a review and then they do need to be approved, but it's not necessarily something that we have a full discussion on. Public hearing is one that has a more dense discussion on it and then usually has a public input for each individual item. And then regular is a more robust item that we would discuss and then have a motion and a vote on as well. So consent is more housekeeping items. Usually they don't have a whole lot of girth to them in relation to information and are really more things that we just need to get approved or at least come to your attention.
Okay. And if there's no line items under those, would you prefer me skip over them or?
Yeah,
Still
it's
call
one of
for
those
them.
things that we just didn't have items. This is a new board. Like I said, usually minutes go under the consent, so we would eventually, go on to consent. But since there's not any, if you want to go straight to regular, the regular agenda, we can do that. So
Okay, let's jump ahead to 502, the Parks and Recreation update.
Just the park and rec update.
The 1,002-page report. I can read it.
No.
All right. Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Christ. I'm the Parks Manager, City of Winter Springs. I'm just going to be giving you a little update on what we've been up to. It's been a while since we've had a meeting, what we've been up to and what we're currently working on in the Parks Department. So I'm going to start with the hot topic, pickleball. So we have now officially surpassed a year. April 13th was our 1 year being open for pickleball. And actually next week will be 1 year being open for reservations. And in that year, this comes from an April date. We've made $23,000 just over from pickleball programs. This isn't incurring costs from tournaments, which we do have a fee schedule for now, which is $2,000 for residents and $3,300 for non-residents for a full day rental. And then we made $18,000 from reservations. And then we do have an upcoming Memorial Day tournament. I'm always going to keep you guys informed on when those tournaments show up. But basically, this shows that we have had a lot of foot traffic at the courts, considering our reservations are Monday through Friday. We only reserve 2 courts, courts 7 and 8. And Saturday, Sunday, we reserve 6 courts. So considering the times we do have available, the reservations are very popular. And the current paddle rack system is also very popular. And I don't know how you guys want, if you guys have any questions on each slide, or if you wanted to wait till the end, you guys can stop me however you want.
Is this the only slide on that topic?
On pickleball, yes.
So just curious, how much did the facility cost? And
Okay.
then is there a plan to recoup those funds that were expensed for it?
So it was a capital item. So
Can I ask you just to speak more into the mic?
Sorry.
They're kind of sensitive, but you're far enough back.
Yep, sorry. Just a question in terms of what was the total expenditure for the project? Is there a plan to recoup those funds? Is that why we're doing the reservations, et cetera?
So the reservations was more of an ask by the residents because there are a lot of people that want to reserve a time on the court themselves for their friends, family, however it is they want to play. And then we have the programmer, which he does the leagues and tournaments and things like that. So we offer a mix of open reservation program. So any given night, it's busy. I've been out there on a Monday, Tuesday night, and we have 150, 200 people out there. It can get busy. And on our tournament days, our first tournament we had, which was 3 months into opening, we had 296 signups for a 3-day tournament. To put that into comparison, the UTSA had a tournament that same weekend. They had 180 signups. So we actually surpassed their signups, or USTA, sorry. We actually surpassed their signups for our first tournament. And then with that, the total cost was roughly $3.2 million for the entire pickleball facility.
I'm sorry, what was the number again?
$3.2 million. A capital item. And we opened April when that included, this was the opening day. I got here at, I think, 5:30 because I was excited to get these things open. And I took a picture with the lights on at 5:30 in the morning just to see what they look like before there was 150 people on there that day. But the plan is where we have reservations, we have the programmer, we have tournaments, we have always activities that are partially paid, but also the reason why these were built was because it was an amenity that the residents did ask for. And it was a big time amenity at Trotwood that people asked for more courts. We don't have space at Trotwood. We had space at Central Winds. We identified the area. We added 14 pickleball courts. And originally, I think the plan was for 6. And then they went bigger and they went tournament courts. And since then, it's been a blur. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a Trotwood question, but I'm not sure if I should.
You can bring that up here. We're talking about pickleball.
Or either way, it's about pickleball.
Well, kind of. So I do play at the Trotwood Park on the tennis court.
Yes, sir.
So there's been over the last 3-4 months, a massive emigration. I think, well, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're dispersed. Where were all those players? So I assume they're coming to.
Central Winds is a very big spot. We open at 7:30 at Central Winds. And I can tell you from 7:30 to 10 before it gets too hot in the morning, we have all 14 courts full.
Okay.
And then about 10:30, 11 o'clock, it slopes off. People do what they need to do. It gets hot during the day. Programs end. We have 3-4 courts filled throughout the day. We take that time, do a little bit of maintenance, check the trash, do what we can out there. And then 4 o'clock, you go out there right now, courts are full. And there's people waiting, lined up along the fence, waiting to go in. So, I mean, it's busy out there all day. And then with Trotwood, we do have currently working a plan to redo those courts. I know that was a last year plan, but we're circling back and starting that process of redoing those, so they will be closed for a limited amount of time. And where we're going to be redoing the tennis court and 4 permanent pickleball courts. But
Is there a plan, I mean, there are no other tennis courts in the city.
there are not.
Like
So
for
is
the-
it possible to make 2
For the
tennis courts there?
ratio, for pickleball and tennis courts, because we both play tennis, but we've had a lot of people come up and want to play tennis, and they can't play tennis. And the ratio of pickleball courts in Winter Springs to tennis is now 15-1.
Yes.
If you can, you remember there's one at Senior Center too.
It's,
Where?
yeah, it's 19 to 1, because
Yeah.
we have the one at the
Okay.
senior center.
That's right.
Senior Center, there's one too.
So,
I mean, is there
but
any possibility of having that just tennis courts, so we have like a little bit more of a 19-2 ratio?
that's understandable. We did have that discussion, and the big identifier we had was the foot traffic out there for tennis.
But see, people want to play, but they show up for 2 reasons, what I've been told. One is pickleballers are crossing the court all the time, and
Yeah.
so it's too hard to play out there.
So we
So
are
they
the,
try to find, they go to Oviedo or other places.
of course.
So that was like one thing, and the other thing is, it's usually being used during the hours they want to go. We've shown up multiple times, and there are people playing tennis. People who don't want to play there anymore, it's because of the people that are coming through that are playing pickleball. It's just too much, like they're
Yeah.
walking through the courts, it's, yeah.
So the factors we took into when we wanted to redo the court was we were going to add a secondary entrance to the side by the new parking lot, and bump out that area and create like a sitting with bleachers. So, and then the requirement will be no chairs are allowed on the court. Like they set their chairs up on the tennis court right now. That'll be the new rules. We'll put up signs and everything. But then they're going to be, when they're not playing, they're required to stay off into that bump out, which would leave the tennis courts open. We're also going to be bumping the pickleball courts over to give the tennis players more room. We've had this discussion about 2 tennis courts in the past. The biggest factor as to why we haven't taken away pickleball, one, pickleball is busy out there. It will be hard to take that amenity away because there are people that walk there. There are people that ride their bikes there, take their golf carts up there that they can't do per se at Central Winds. But also the amount of tennis courts in the surrounding cities as well, we did factor in compared to pickleball courts. So there was more tennis courts. We have them on Redbug. There's, I think, 6 or
Those
7
are
courts
pay to
down there.
play.
Yeah,
Are they private?
They're city, but they're pay to play.
It's a county
Yeah, you-
park.
it's a county
Yeah,
park.
Yeah, so you have to pay for it,
Right.
versus just go and take your
Right.
turn.
Right.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Did you say it cost the city $3.2 million for the pickleball courts?
Yes.
Thank you.
But it wasn't, the city paid that much, it would cost that much, right?
Well, it was a capital item. So the funding was in various forms, but yes, it was a capital item.
So has the decision already been made, because obviously we're new to the committee, that you guys are not going to entertain having 2 tennis courts there?
No permanent decision has been made because the work isn't done. The quotes we had gotten and the direction we had gotten before from the prior board was 4 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court.
So would like a petition possibly help?
Anything you guys would like to provide, if you want to get names, we're always looking at
I think
potential
the
options.
previous conversation had circulated around just the utilization, and I think we even had some numbers provided at one point that the tennis courts were underutilized.
Yeah, we did
comparison.
we did a study.
They were used more prior to pickleball becoming so popular, but a lot of tennis players have leaned away from even attempting to go there.
Yeah, I think we actually identified the need for pickleball before pickleball became a big trend out at Trotwood, and they lined the 4 courts out there, not permanent. We do provide the nets. But with that, we were the first to really hop in on the pickleball trend, which is why we built the facility as well. Because I think last meeting, I pulled the record of all, everybody who has attended and where they came from. we had pickleball players coming from Jacksonville, Champions Gate. They're coming from everywhere to come and play pickleball in Winter Springs. So it's a hub, and that's what we tried to create. That's the reason why the facility was a big draw for us.
Okay, the one question I had is, are there any plans to complete the project as it was originally designed? Or is it just this and that, and they're stopped?
We'll get into that. That's a separate presentation. I have the Parks Master Plan, which was approved, I think the meeting on February 24th. That was approved, and obviously that's a master plan. That's a guideline for how we want Central Winds Park to look in the next however many years. That's just a guideline. We don't have to necessarily do all the projects in there, but it's just a guideline for the future. I think what you're talking about is that community center that was next to it.
No, the original plan pickleball courts, and they had a building, an office building for the pickleball courts and.
Yeah, that was like a
whole
center.
big thing, yeah.
Yeah, that was a community center. So that building wouldn't work there because of the way that the slopes are and the stormwater created. So we did end up trying to relocate that building. But we'll get into that on the next presentation.
Just to close this out, just
Yeah.
two observations we kind of talked about. The underutilization piece, so I get the demand, and I think this is a great facility. I think it's great for the city. Awesome. The whole piece about being underutilized for tennis, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because their balls are going all over on the court, and you're just outnumbered, right? And people were crossing across, so you almost couldn't. It was very difficult actually to play. I will say, since the facility's been open, probably for the last 5 months, there's been a substantial decrease in terms of the people who play there. I mean, like, what I've observed is probably like a quarter of the people that go, because I think I don't know where they all are, but it feels like they're all going to this facility, which makes sense.
So I've gotten to meet everybody. I open pickleball every morning, 7:30, and then I drive around Trotwood, and we study. We see who's in the park, right?
Fair enough.
I try to do it every day if I can. Obviously, things pop up. Can't open pickleball in the morning, but either way, I try to do it just about every day and see who's where. And I've noticed with the group at Central Winds, they have Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Central Winds, Tuesday, Thursday at Trotwood, or and then they have their groups that they travel. So they've created kind of a pickleball club that they all just say, hey, let's meet here in the morning, or we're going to Trotwood, and we're going to Central Winds, and they have their cliques per se where they have 8 people, and they have certain days of the week where they decide to go to. So you'll find certain days of the week, like Monday mornings. I think Trotwood is very busy on Monday mornings. Compared to Central Winds, I see the same people on Tuesday morning at Central Winds.
And Michael, have you had a chance to actually drive around the Oviedo courts? Because I understand you're saying Oviedo has more tennis court options, but we play in Oviedo because we can't get at Trotwood.
Yeah.
And Oviedo, we can't find tennis courts.
Okay.
Because again, the pickleball, so have you had a chance to drive around?
I haven't done Oviedo. I only know
They have
Seminole
options,
County.
But those options have also been taken over.
Yeah,
by
I haven't
pickleball.
driven through Oviedo, so I can't speak on the Oviedo courts, but I know Longwood had courts, Lake Mary, and then Seminole County has a few different tennis complexes around.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone to Sweetwater, and those have also been taken over by pickleballers. Round Lake is almost impossible to get a tennis court. Riverside, same thing.
I've
We
driven
do have
past,
some that are just for tennis.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are half the time are instructional, so you can't get on there.
I've driven past the new courts that just opened a few months ago in Lake Mary a few times. And I mean, I guess, I don't know if I'm hitting them at a bad time, but they don't seem that full because they do have a tennis complex as well,
I mean,
right
it's a
down the
little bit of a
street.
drive. I mean, to ask if pickleball players
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
Lake Mary would probably be the same thing. They'd probably
Yeah.
go, well, we have 14 courts here, why would we drive there?
But I try to look at the different courts around to see how busy they are. So thanks for the suggestion. I'll drive past Oviedo at the hot times that we are and see what they're like in the morning and the afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, then the programs. We just completed the tree giveaway. We still have a few trees here and there that we're giving out to people that may have been missed. But we delivered over 1,200 trees in 4 days. It was our parks team did a fantastic job doing that, and we had help from Urban Beautification as well. We had our first weekend of Fish Winter Springs, which was last Saturday. We had 24 people show up to that event. It is honestly one of our most popular events. We sold out in, I think, a minute and a half for the 20 signups, and then we had a waiting list of up to 75 people. Our father-daughter dance was back in February. We had over 350 attendees over the 2 nights. That event was, I think, one of the most popular events of the year in regards to everyone seemed to have fun. I was in the kitchen passing out food the whole time, so I got to see them happy getting food. I didn't see the rest of it. And then our egg hunt had over 600 participants between the ages of 2 to 12, which was a few weekends ago, the weekend before Easter. And then some small parks items. The Sam Smith Bocce Ball Court was opened last year. We're currently putting signage out there to just show the general rules and everything, and some scoreboards. The Babe Ruth season will be ending actually tomorrow night. And then our fields at Central Winds Park close from May 26th to August 3rd for our summer maintenance. We're going to be doing resodding and insect treatments and various other treatments throughout the fields. Our master plan was completed. I won't talk about that now. We'll talk about that for the next presentation. And we actually had our Central Winds Park ballast replacement for the lights to try to stop the buzzing. And I can tell you that it has made a big difference in regards to being able to sit and watch a game and not just hear it ringing the whole time. So that has been completed as of May 1st. And then our dog park will be closing from June 30th to August 1st for our annual maintenance. We're going to be resodding and trying to just spruce up that area, doing some tree trimming and pressure washing and fixing some fences and things like that. Any questions there?
The bocce ball's like just sitting there?
No, you have to bring your own.
Oh, you have to bring it out.
Yeah.
I was like,
So that's just not something that we want to keep up there, because if a kid grabs it and starts throwing it at another kid,
right.
Or they'll wander around.
yeah.
I was like, wow, we must go through a lot.
Yeah, at the senior center, we have shuffleboard and horseshoes, and those are actually located inside the senior center. You can walk in and ask for them, but we do have those items inside the senior center. The current project list that we're working on, we actually started on Tuesday for the pavilion install at Trotwood Park. We have the first legs going up tomorrow, and we don't have a timetable for the completion, but we're working hard at it. The Sam Smith Grill, that's a project that we're going to be undertaking. We have that concrete pad already out there. We're going to work on building a grill on that pad because it's something at Sam Smith we don't have. Next to that pavilion is a grill. Moss Park re-landscaping / renovation to reopen after the construction's finished on that creek. We're going to take the time that it is closed and try to spruce up Moss Park a little bit, do some repainting, clean up some of the areas, fix the fencing. Torcaso Pavilion 2, that was in the plans. We don't have a timetable for that, but we have some permits in. And then the pavilion renovation at Central Winds Park. We currently have Pavilion B, the second pavilion, which we already did Pavilion A. Now we're working on Pavilion B to be able to get it to where it's rentable. We get some flooding out there when it rains, and after it rains, we have dirt on the pavilion, so we would have to clean it up. So it's not a rentable pavilion right now, but we're looking to find a way to stop that flooding. Amphitheater lighting is actually in the process right now. We're working on putting 8 lights in the amphitheater. That'll help for the various events we have throughout the year. We have the Highland Games and 4th of July, Hometown Harvest. And then also it is a rentable space during the year, so we do have a lot of high school sports that train out there, cross countries out there. So that should be done by September, we're shooting for. And the Torcaso Park restroom doors and water fountain install. We do have a standalone water fountain we're going to be installing out there, and we're buying new doors and putting them out there because the current ones are fading away. And that's upcoming events. We have Fish Winter Springs Week 2. That'll be this weekend. We work with FWC and Fish Florida. For that, they donate poles, and Fish Florida donates fishing poles, and FWC comes out and teaches the kids how to fish, how to cast, how to bait a hook, and it's a fun time for the kids. The kids enjoy it. The staff enjoys it. We have our food truck Thursday, May 15th. We have 6-7 trucks out there, depending on what shows up. It's always a fun time for that event. We have some Babe Ruth practices, so the kids are out there running around. Celebration of Freedom, July 4th. And then Camp Sunshine, which is June 2nd to August 1st. That I can tell you Camp Sunshine signups were in person for the first time this year. It went very smooth, and we're excited for the next summer to start. And I will add one more. Tomorrow morning, we do have a naming ceremony for the senior center at 10 a.m. So if you want to show up to that, we will be having a renaming. Is that it? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You said that the shuffleboard courts at the senior center, which is part of Sunshine Park or
Yes.
is related to it, they can reserve?
No, you can go inside the senior center and they have shuffleboard items for you to use.
Okay, but they
Yeah.
can't reserve a court, so
No.
if they wanted to, but yet you can go to Central Winds Park and reserve a court, which is a city park.
Yes.
Okay, I don't understand how you can do it in one and not in the other.
The draw for a reservation at the shuffleboard courts hasn't been nearly as much as pickleball. So to provide a reservation system for pickleball for people to play was a big ask by the residents.
Okay.
I just had a question too. I know you guys did the basketball courts at Trotwood. Is there any idea about putting lights out there?
That was not in the initial plan.
Okay.
It's more of an issue is that park is dawn to dusk. So if we were to add lights, then that means the park would be open past dusk.
Okay.
And that would create staffing issues and also the residents near it having those lights.
Okay.
Talking about lights, I know they fixed the one Central Winds. Is there anything about changing the lights at the dog park? Because half of the street lights are already there. And you have the staff going to turn off the, shut down the pickleball court so they can just slide over and lock up the dog park at the same time. Because a lot of times in the winter, you can't use it because you're at work when the sun is up. And then in the evenings when most people want to walk their dogs there, there's no light.
We currently have no plans to add lights in the dog park. We've done research around other cities and counties and everywhere in Central Florida and beyond, and we haven't identified another dog park that does have lights in them per se.
So, usually want to be ahead. That's why we had one earlier.
And
And
there,
everyone else, we were ahead of the curve. But the lights are needed just because if it gets dark at 4, we're stuck.
yeah, and per se, the insurance risks that would cause that as well would be pretty high. If there is a dark corner of the dog park that wasn't lit and there was a
Oh,
dog or a person
yeah,
standing there. Yeah, it's just not something the park's identified as something to work on right now. Anything else? Next one, Tristan.
When I think all these ideas are things that potentially could be suggested by this committee that would then go to the commission. So we're free to make those recommendations. So
Yeah, because half of the lights are already there.
Just do the, what? That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly. No, you can do the PowerPoint, and the report was more for viewing purposes, and I'll just speak on that overview of the PowerPoint.
I mean, the 90-some pages in there.
Yep. So this is our Central Winds Park master plan. So basically, they've identified a few areas of Central Winds Park that could be enhanced, and the main thing was the circulation. How do we get around? So this picture you're looking at right here is the overview of what they wanted the park to look like. And included in that, all the purple lines is the circulation. So this would include new sidewalks, new signage directional signage around the park, new entry signage, and just general wayfinding to be able to get around, because it is something that Central Winds does not have right now. And ironically, we were walking the site with the group, and there was 3 people that asked me where to go while we were walking the site. So it was just good timing. But yeah, the first step is circulation and wayfinding. So those are the 2 main focuses of the master plan, and all of the spots on it are the various signs that they had requested for us to add. So in general, in this overview, they've identified the gathering spaces. So all of the areas you see, the yellow small boxes are currently lighted areas of the park. And all of the purple or red is all future lighted areas of the park that were proposed in this plan. That includes lighting to the lower fields, lighting to the amphitheater. We already have lighting at pickleball, and then we had street lights down in that dog park area, and then a potential light down by the pier. So these are all the main gathering areas that we've notified as high traffic areas, and it's something that they identified as a need for the park. They did sort the park into different priorities, different zones that they're going to be working on. So the upper fields, the biggest thing they identified was the circulation and how people get in. So they want to create a buffer for the playground, landscaping, and the phase one is more enhancements for the future of the park. Meanwhile, phase two was the lower fields, and this was the most asked for enhancement was the lights for the baseball fields, the soccer fields, and the multi-purpose fields.
But never mind, I shouldn't interrupt.
Go ahead, you can ask a question.
I really, the whole concept of if we have one dark corner, I'm sorry, kids playing, they fall in a hole because they can't see it is just as dangerous. I really think that since everything is now still, they're increasing the amount of lighting, to say that one part of it, you can't have it, even though I would think of it's fairly cheap because the lights, infrastructure's already there.
That is actually Duke Energy's lights. Those we don't maintain those, so we would have to run our own lighting infrastructure through there. But yeah, these lights. So we do have 7 months of baseball and soccer a year, and during the winter times, we run out of light at 5:30, 6 o'clock, which this would add an extra timing for these kids to be able to be out there, kids and adults. We have added a lot more programs on our fields to be able to be out there and play, practice, however it is. And with that, they also included a cross Seminole Trail because that entrance to pickleball is a right turn or a left turn out. They wanted to make that a little more easier to navigate through when there's a biker coming up the trail or down the trail and someone pulling in. Phase 3 was the Central Winds Parkway fence and plaza. So we're looking to be able to fence in the park area to be able to control circulation more throughout the park. And with that, we would also redo the upper event lawn, which includes the lights. We would add a small area for the top of the amphitheater to be able to congregate in, and then sidewalks throughout to be able to get around the amphitheater. It would not only enhance our events, but it would also create a better area for the residents to be able to, there's a lot of people that picnic, to just be able to picnic in the park in a more welcoming area. And then the event lawn is included in that. We currently have the stage, but if you've ever been down there, the stage has a very significant drop off. So they wanted to create the additional walkways and regrading of the area to make it a flatter surface the whole way down.
Can I, sorry.
Go ahead.
The Cross Seminole Trail, are you saying, so the road kind of makes that right-hand turn
Yes,
by the dog park? Are you saying the trail would no longer cross that road?
it would cross it, but they identified a zigzag type of entrance to pickleball
Okay.
to be able to create a buffer so you go around and you are going to be able to see them as they're coming up either
Okay.
way down the trail.
Because otherwise you practically hit them before you can see them.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's you have to drive cautiously around that area currently.
And the other, is there a sidewalk plan for there? Because now that you have nice speed bumps, people on bicycles can't use it unless they go off the road anyway.
Yeah, so the speed bumps we did add the speed bumps because people were speeding down the road. There are gaps there where a biker can get through, but there is a sidewalk proposed on here that would run the length of the grass area above the road, and it would go all the way down to our gravel road that we currently have, our access road, and lead down to the pier. Which would create another access, and then it would have a walkway across to get to the dog park and a walkway across to get to the pickleball courts, where we do have an entrance. We have currently 3 entrances to the pickleball courts, one on the back side, which is more or less an exit in case of overflow, but also a lot of people hit their balls over the fence. So they go get them that way. And then the other side is just a secondary entrance back by the programmer. He's able to control when people come in for programs by going in through that back entrance.
For the lower fields with the lights, I know that there was a petition that went around. Those fields are rented fields though, right? From the like soccer clubs and.
So we do have contracts with each of those clubs. We have one with FKK, one with our Babe Ruth. We have rented outside of that where we have an ultimate frisbee group. We have a flag football group we're introducing next year. Pop Warner uses our football field. We do have groups that are lined up where our fields are pretty much set throughout the year. But we also do have times, like right now where our soccer season's winding down, baseball season's winding down. So our fields are now, they're not open for play. We don't advertise it as that because that's when other groups try to come in and use the fields as a team. But if a mother-son or father-son, father-daughter
Right, but it
want to
gets-
come out and use them,
It's lighter now, later,
yes.
but when they're being used during their seasons, my son played soccer, so I'm very familiar with the soccer fields.
Of course.
And we couldn't use them in the evening or, for practices in the evenings because there were no lights. So we'd have to go to Oviedo or we'd have to go to other fields because there's no lights in those other fields and they're so crowded. All the other upper fields are completely jam-packed where
Yeah.
like teams are getting shoved in corners.
Yeah, they have, I think, 3 teams practicing on a field to be able to use the field space on
Yeah.
our upper fields.
I
So
know
the lower
people were
fields,
all up in arms about how much it's going to cost, but wouldn't those fields get used more? And you could actually, the clubs could pay to use those fields? So, I mean, you'd kind of get some of the money back to recoup from charging the clubs?
yep, that's why we've identified that as a need that
Okay.
we made sure to tell them one of the first things was lights for the lower fields was a big ask by both of our groups. They've been asking us for a while, but we haven't had this plan in place. So now that we've gone through with the plan, it creates a guideline for what we can work off of for future park plans.
But
Thank
we
you.
don't have a timeline for that, though. I'm sorry. We don't have a timeline for that.
There's no current timeline.
Okay.
We just got the plan in February, so now we have to analyze the plan and work through it and make a plan for funding sources and phasing of the projects themselves.
Okay, thank you.
See the west edge. The west edge isn't. I guess the picture's not popping up here. Let's see if I can see the west edge. Yeah, so it would be the right above 2A. That's the west edge of the park here and pickleball. That area is, with pickleball being done, is pretty much, I'm not going to say completed because there's always projects that we can do, but they identified that kind of west edge of the park as an area that wasn't as in need of the east side of the park. And then the event hall space in the back is, we would create a secondary entrance using our current access point. They would make that more into a road, drive back into the back, there'd be an event hall. In the comparison we did, we compared the other potential venues around, meeting spaces, wedding venues, various other price points, and we kind of worked off of that need for what we don't have in the area. And then we would create a new parking lot and relocate the playground that's there to a destination play up closer to the amphitheater. If you can see where by the 4, there's a circle, they would create a destination playground there. And then the nature trails. The plan for those was to enhance the surface of the trails. So right now it's just dirt. They would like to enhance that to something that's more accessible to get through there, and then expand the trails, cut them out, make sure they identified every tree that's back there. They did a survey and were able to widen the trails just a little bit to be able to get more people down there. And then potential for a disc golf course in that back area as well.
Where are the volleyball courts on this? Did I miss them? Or are they going away?
They're back by the,
They're back by that
Pavilion.
pond in the pavilions.
And 6.
Okay.
Yeah, the basketball court
That's right.
would,
Yeah.
in this plan, the basketball court would no longer be here. But when we look at the other amenities we do have in the city, we have Torcaso Park, Sunshine Park, Trotwood Park, and Moss Park that all do have basketball courts in the city. So it's just a half court that we had at Central Winds, so to make space for the event lawn.
So the event venue is a building,
Yes.
and what is the capacity plan for that?
No capacity plan for that. Obviously, this is a plan, so we can formulate that as we go. This is just a guideline for us to work off of. This will be an idea for the future that we would work with the park staff and other departments and pitch it to commission at some point.
And for the trails, in previous meetings, we discussed the possibility of kind of a continuous loop that you could have 5Ks on and things like that. Is that still part of the thought?
If it's a hardened trail and they make it accessible, then yes, you could have races down there. To do a 5K, we would have to get a certified person to come in and certify the route, which we do currently have a 5K route at the park. We have a 5K coming up in a
You
few
don't
weeks.
necessarily have to be certified.
For a lot of the races that do come in, they like to be certified. I mean, we could have one on our own and create our own. But to actually have a 5K that they want to have registrations for, they like to have
No, you
3.2.
You don't. Yeah, I host a lot of 5Ks, including
Yeah.
the Monster Dash 5K in Longwood, and the public doesn't care.
Okay.
Nobody's setting records. You don't need certification.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one in May every year now. It started last year was the first year. This will be the second year upcoming. And they do a taco race. It's more of a Cinco de Mayo, but we have to have it later because of our sports schedule. They ran the route before because they knew their people was a running club, more or less, that came out. And I think they had 300, 400 signups come out to that one. And there were people actually finding the distances, and if it was under the amount, they were like, people are going to say it. So I was like, I'm just doing what you guys want. We have the certified trail that we actually had someone come out and do. So that's what we're currently working from, but it's always something we can look for once we have the actual trails completed. Yeah, and then the west edge, the waterfront. Don't know why the photos aren't popping up, but the side, this is more down by the augmentation plant fishing pier to enhance the sidewalk, create a pavilion, because currently we don't have any shaded areas down there other than trees, and shade coverings as well. And I think that's it for that one. Upper Fields parking, which was included in phase 1. But those trees that we currently have were brought in when the park was built, and they are hitting their life of being, I guess, where we would have to replace them. So that is a future plan, currently over 30 years old now. So the trees they planted there are 40 to 45-year trees.
Is that a new pond and 6 behind the event venue?
That would be added as a stormwater requirement, yes.
Would the event center back up to that then?
Yes.
Okay.
It would kind of be on the side. You can see the general diagram for the event center. Their identification is what they said they wanted a venue that could host over 300 people, because currently I think the wedding venue down the street has a maximum of 175. So they wanted there wasn't a venue in the area that could host under a certain price point. Any other questions?
We have the best park in like Central Florida. We just need what, $50 million?
I have a question/concern. So I got sandbags during the last storm, and it was raining like crazy. I don't know if anybody got them or not, but it was in the dirt road, and you made it in the circle where you park and try to get them, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Slogging through the mud, everybody was parked on top of each other, people backing, into the sandbag. So just to think about where that could be held in the future, because where it was held last time was a disaster.
Of course.
and a
So
nightmare.
we're actually, that was more of not an emergency. That's where it was in the future, or not the future, in the past. We had done our sandbag location there. Also in the past, it was just for Winter Springs residents. So this was the first year that it was open to every resident. We didn't expect the turnout. City staff has worked together and we created a map that will show how this works. We've also, the new sandbag plan. So it's still going to be in the same area, but we've identified a way to make it easier on the residents, but also easier on the city staff as well. Where we have barricades set up, we'll have cones directing traffic. So our line could host over 1,000 cars and it would just wag through the park in different various directions. But yeah, we identified that as something we needed to work on before hurricane season. So we created a new map. We already have it ran by with the county. They're aware of our sandbag plan and we're ready to go if need be.
I forget what the limit was, but I remember carrying all my bags, like almost a whole football field in the mud up the hill, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, so
halfway
this
decent
would
shape, but it was tough.
this would alleviate the traffic for sure.
Yeah.
With the way that we're going to snake it through. But then also we would allow only a certain amount of cars down there. And we are planning on making sandbags ahead of time. So all you got to do is put them into your car and go.
Okay. I mean, just as a committee, just before storm season, maybe we just make sure we got everything right. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense, right? Just a little bit more planning.
Yeah, this plan was actually set in place. We started looking at this in November. And we
Okay.
created the map in November and December. And we've acquired everything we need to be able to run this sandbag station.
Maybe we could just review it as an update and then one of the next meetings. Just how, just a diagram just like this would be great. So
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Am I imagining, was there a boardwalk in the plans before that has been removed?
So it is currently still in the plan. It's not a current park project that we are working on, but it's in the master plan as a future project.
Yeah, because it's kind of weird, they claimed it was not part of their plan too. Because I talked to them about it, because to get permits, you have to pay a lot of money, and you may not get the permits if you don't pass. So, then, I don't know.
So
One of the plans that said something,
I'm just confused. You're saying it's in the plan, but it's not in this plan? What are we?
It's in the plan.
I saw it.
You
Oh.
can't really see the West Edge waterfront, and you can see the nature trail.
but
It's in there.
one of the maps that says not part of our plan will be done by someone else or something, I don't know, unless they changed the last version.
Yeah. So this project is not currently in the plan for us to work on, but it is in the master plan in case we wanted to do it in the future.
What do they have for 8? That's what,
For 8, that's the West Edge waterfront. That's the
That where the
pavilion,
dock
the
is?
shade, yeah. The pavilion, the shade, and better
okay,
sidewalks.
so they are gonna do something about it's a nice slab of cement, and they don't have anything on there. Okay, but I was also, where we had to go down to some kids' playground area and some pavilions. Is that going to be paved? I don't see it where we're at on that map, unless it just disappears.
No, it's next to 4. You can see it by the event lawn, the destination playground. It's right in that. It's like they put an earth on here is what it looks like, but basically they identified other cities having a destination playground is what they call it. So it's a unique playground to that park that people will actually travel to go to this playground. So our playground that we currently have at Central Winds is our oldest playground in the city. It will need to get replaced sooner rather than later. So the idea was to move it to a separate area of the park and create a destination play area with other pavilions and walking trails around it as well.
So it's going to be on the opposite side of the bathroom? I'm trying to figure out exactly how far over that is.
Ultimately, yes,
Okay.
the other side of the bathroom.
Now, my other question is there any attempt to make it handicapped accessible?
There's a small parking area next to it that will be accessible for it, but the playground itself, there's no plan for the playground. That the playground will be in future talks. This master plan was just a guideline for what the park is going to look like. The actual details of what's going to go into it has not been discussed yet.
Yeah, because where most of the pavilions, there's no sidewalk to them. So if you have a family and you have grandma coming with you, it's not going to work. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
Okay,
Thank you.
we move on to 503, the discussion of duties, the focus of the committee.
So really this item mainly is to see what your top 3 to 5 main focuses are for going into like the next meeting, kind of understanding what you guys want to look at, because the duties are kind of pretty well laid out within the ordinance that we sent you guys. I actually have a reference just in case you guys want to see it again. But it really, I'm just trying to see where you guys want to focus, what you guys want to talk about at the next meeting, if there's anything that you want us to look into for the next meeting, any items that you may want to bring up, like kind of spitball to see what we can maybe bring you guys to have a very productive meeting, and get to know what you guys really are focused on.
Yeah, I'll go. I really want to see if there's any future plans for connectivity of trails for biking or pedestrians. For example, at Winding Hollow Park, there's a gravel trail that connects the kind of two neighborhoods. And I'm wondering, are we planning on perhaps paving that? That would be a nice little bypass for bicycles and things like that. So not necessarily looking for that to be addressed at this, but
Yeah.
I want, connectivity issues are important to me.
Oh yeah, we can definitely look in that. I know there is maybe some slight issues when it comes to the trail since it is Seminole County. We would have to, talk to them back and forth and kind of see what they'd be willing to do, since that is their property. But we could always, look into it, see what they say, and go from there for you guys.
Okay, so this was not to say, let's look at what's in writing and change it at all?
No, I mean, not. If you'd like, yeah.
If you could fill out a blue form.
Yeah. Name and address for the record, please.
So for the record, Kevin McCann, Mayor of the City of Winter Springs. And so first of all, thank you all for volunteering your time. Genuinely, I understand. And I started off serving on boards just like this, and it is a way for everyone to get involved and have a voice. And it's a really important voice that we have some access to opinions. You guys talk things out. This new ordinance that I signed in on April 14th, it gives you very wide power to get involved and make suggestions. What I'd like to kind of do before I leave, I'll hand you each my business card with my cell phone on it, and make sure that you're communicating with me where you feel. You are not supposed to be discussing these topics amongst each other unless you're in a meeting, right, as Christian talked about. But you guys can make suggestions. We talked about the lighting of the dog park. Sounds very reasonable to me. Lighting of the lower fields is astronomically expensive. As we started talking about the master plan, the lighting of those lower fields, you're talking about millions of dollars. But lighting of the dog park, because it's not that large of an area, you don't need the massive height that's hurricane proof and all those things. We'll be putting things in, and with your guidance, trying to set the priorities. And we will be listening and leaning on you guys to help get a pulse and tell us what it is you want us to fund first. Again, wide range if you read through that ordinance. You guys got you can cast that net pretty wide. When we start talking about sandbags, I'll be honest with you, as I'm listening, it happens to take place in the park, but that is more of an emergency management thing, and is not something that will be part of this board. But there's some nuances in all of this stuff. But certainly, if you have a suggestion, because we're using the park regarding that, we're all ears. We can go down that rabbit hole pretty hard. If I can, I'd like maybe, if you'll allow me, a little bit of a vision. Let's go up 50,000 foot, right? And so our leadership decades ago were smart enough to identify that land values were going to skyrocket. And the commission went into debt and bought Central Winds Park and all of that farmland and set it aside, which was just an amazing, boy, were we fortunate to live in a community that they got themselves together and did that. Now, what it's done, however, is, so we have that, which is great. So now we're famous for our parks. That's great. But for example, I moved to Winter Springs to open Stonewood Grill, if any of you are familiar with it, down on Redbug, and we were looking for locations. And when we drop a pin on a map, for a restaurant chain and you want to open something, you need to have a certain population, a certain socio-demographic kind of things, right? Everybody always wants to know, why don't we have good restaurants in Winter Springs? Why aren't they in the town center? We don't have the population. We have this big imaginary wall, which is like Jessup, that cuts across that imaginary line, which will make it very difficult for Darden or Olive Garden and those kinds of places to come into the town center. But what we can do with that vision is to take the parklands, and we will never get our money back on pickleball. We'll never get our money. We're never going to make it. Babe Ruth cost, I think, with all of the 30-year program, over 100,000 children. The city residents pay about 90% of the cost of that when they pay for their fees to play. Now, we could, if people want lit fields, we're going to have to double those fees or triple those fees and kind of get that back. But there's a lot of moving pieces. But by bringing people into Central Winds, and you look at Oviedo has Oviedo in the park, Orlando has Lake Eola, Altamont has Crane's Roost. We have this amazing resource, Lake Jessup. And that was the idea of the boardwalk and other ideas, is draw people in there to support businesses, provide property value stability for all of us that live here, continue to make it a draw. Again, there's a lot that can be done there. We're proud of our parks. I think we all are, right? And whether they're the big Central Winds or the neighborhood ones like Torcaso or Trotwood or Moss Park and those that are dropped in, they all play a different role. But they all work really well together. We're fortunate we haven't had takeout bonds. Castleberry just did a ribbon cutting of a park this weekend on Sunday. And they had to borrow millions and millions and millions of dollars and take out bonds that the residents are going to be paying on. We're fortunate. We've been very, very conservative. We have deep reserves. A lot of these things, like the pickleball, you're saying, hey, I believe you may have asked how it was paid for. It comes from different resources. Part of it is every time you build in Winter Springs, you pay a park impact fee. That money is set aside and must be spent on parks. Then we have some reserve money that we match that with. There's a bunch of different moving pieces. Look, I'll wrap this up. The bottom line is you've got a lot of, you've got a real wide scope that you can reach out to us on. I'd like to make sure that if you have questions about some of the nuances, why the dog park lights or, all the different things, reach out to me. And I can help. The nuance is pretty deep, and it does get carried on. I think there was a conversation about doing away with advisory boards, and that got shut down really fast. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the commission and the commissioners have asked me to maybe reach out and make sure that you guys feel like you're connected and that we're listening. And if you have questions, that you reach out to me, shoot me an email individually, or as a group. You turn it, and then it's formalized and things. But I just want to make sure that you
When we recommend,
cast it wide.
when we recommend, it's like, we
Yeah.
decide that, you know what, we really need to have that sidewalk over someplace so the kids don't get run over by whatever. And we make that recommendation, how does it get farther up the chain to get to be on the commission board? I mean, voting system or
So
whatever.
I'll be honest with you. A lot of things may not necessarily even come before a vote necessarily. What will happen is then we give direction to the city staff to make this a priority or that a priority. And you might not necessarily, it might not be something, but if you really want it to be, we can. I would tell you, start with, send me an email, and I'll discuss it with the city manager, and we'll bring Michael in. And Michael's been a wonderful asset to the city. He really has. He's everywhere. We appreciate you, Michael. But let's make sure. I guess the first step is making sure that you understand that you have a very wide net of responsibilities, and second, that we have to make sure we're talking and then we're communicating. That's the whole reason for the board, is to make sure the commission and city staff knows what the residents want. That's the bottom line. And we just want to make sure that communication is flowing. So when you're saying something, let us know. We'll talk about it. Right? And if I have to come to every meeting, I'll do that, whatever it takes. We just want to make sure that your voices are being heard, and that if there's something you want to see being done, that you make us aware of it, so that we can pull the city staff in and kind of start the priorities and because we can't, that building is probably, that building in the park, boy, we're the only city in Seminole County that doesn't have meeting space. But that's the lowest of the low on the priority list, to be honest with you. I think a lot of those other, the connectivity, allowing people to get in and out, handicapped folks and bikes and, you know, cross Seminole Trail, those are far higher priorities right now.
I love the idea of being able to walk the entire park, because during practices, I would walk the upper fields, and you'd have to circle between the fields and the baseball fields 4 times for it to be a mile.
My
It's really
understanding,
boring.
the most important 2 things that this plan came out and those engineers that did the study is, one is that it's such a massive park that there's no real good mapping directions. Like you're going to meet for a barbecue, and your family, your cousins say, "Hey, meet us at Central Winds," and you get in there, you go, "Where in the world are they?" You know, you don't know if they're at the pickleball courts, you know, there's some picnic tables down on the waterfront, or if they're, you know, in the woods, or if they're down near the stadium or the amphitheater. Like, you can get lost in there. So we need to lay that out. Second is accessibility or access for handicapped folks, and being able to get from one section walking to the next section, and really lay out and make it a lot easier to move back and forth without having to take a long hike and
Well,
walk
yeah.
around.
If we're only doing see, that's my problem, unless we're doing monthly meetings, it's gonna be 4th of July, it'd be over before I make my recommendation. Because I've said before, the plan was last year, that section will be okay, that sounds great, but people won't do it unless it's enforced. Something needs to be in the way so they can't park there until there is staff, because that's what happened, staff wasn't there yet. This is driving me crazy. Staff wasn't there yet, therefore they weren't reserved past the 3 spots. And you have thousands of people. A lot of people do walk, but there's no handicap park, even though it said it should be, because there was no enforcement of it. But you can't expect them to be there at dawn. But when they put all those things out so people don't park on the grass, they need to block that whole section off until the staff there can say, "Oh, you got a handicap tag, okay."
Yeah, there's no question. Hey, folks, we're all human, and we can continue to do better, right? And that's when those are those emails. And trust me, I read your emails, and we were reacted. We were trying to do better. There's no question, and you weren't the first person to say it, or the only person to say it. Those are really important things. Again, that's what accessibility is. One of the top 2 things that we must work on, and that's what was identified by the outside engineers.
The lower light fields, was there an estimate done?
Yeah, I think
You said
to
astronomical, so I was
replace,
just curious.
yeah, I think to replace the existing upper field lights, which are already lit, but changing them to LED, was 1.6 million, if I'm correct, and I'm pretty confident.
Okay, well, they have lights.
1.2. Yeah, but the expense. So the problem with the lower lights or the lower fields is that first there is no utility. So Duke would have to run that, right? And that would have to be engineered, and the engineering alone is astronomical. Then those poles, remember those big tall poles, have to be hurricane proof. Those aren't lights for a dog park or the pickleball. Pickleball, those things are real low, and they're right. That you don't need that. For the
I
big
guess
fields,
that's
you
why I
need to
was
go.
thinking, because they
So
just went ahead and put them in for the pickleball fields, but yet we've got all these fields in the lower
super
fields
low.
that have,
Doesn't need that,
Majorly
and if they
different.
get ripped out by a hurricane or something like that, it's light aluminum, it's like, it's the weight of this podium, this aluminum podium.
So did we get an
Those kinds of
estimate for-
yeah, we did, and it was something, for the lighting
lights
of
for
the
the lower
lower
fields?
fields, we had 2. One was, we could have it built, and we would be paying, I believe it was a 20-year note at $28,000 a month, effectively a mortgage payment for 20 years to pay for those lower lights. And if you can imagine, I don't believe Babe Ruth brings in $28,000, but we're talking $28,000 a month for 20 years to have those installed, and the engineering and all of those other things. That's a heavy lift. It is still a priority on that master plan. It says we need to be trying to chase down maybe some federal or state funding, get some matching grants, do some other things to get that done. But that's a heavy lift. That's something that my experience, it will be done. It's not happening in the next 4 or 5 years.
Maybe one of these Babe Ruth players will go off and make it
Yeah.
in the big leagues, and
Like-
then he will come back
yeah.
or
Like
she.
Lake Howell High
Do
School,
your
right?
research, because they may be
Right.
there somewhere, because that's
Yeah.
what happened with I worked at Lake Health, and we had a huge grant. and stuff like that.
If I can, and I don't want to, this is your meeting, it's not mine. Do you have questions of me since I'm here? Can I answer other questions like the lighting of the lower fields? Yeah, and
Yeah, is the
Yeah.
park money that does anything with the roads in the park? Because there's not enough curb cuts, you know what I mean by that?
I know a curb cut
Yeah,
is.
because they only have one where you would go to like 4th of July. But I know that there's 15 million people trying to get their not only wheelchairs, but their kids' strollers and all the people that have all the, trucks or whatever in there that they have to carry all the food or whatever to their tent. And
If
they had more,
you,
it'd be much better.
I believe you got the entire master plan. If you read through that, you'll see towards the back, it sets up priority lists. And I believe number one was trying to map it out so people understand where they're going. But number two, but second highest priority is accessibility. And that means handicap accessibility, allowing people to move from one place to the other. It needs a whole lot of concrete poured all over it to make it accessible and allow that flow of people, whether it be cars or pedestrians or people on bikes. The interconnectivity is the second biggest priority.
And I have one more request, because I never could find one. Is there a map of every different park, the bigger parks? Because if I say, oh, right over here, there's a park, I can't explain that there's no way to get to some place from here to there without that kind of a map.
Do you mean within the city? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, just like Central Winds Park and Troutman Park or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'll speak on that one as well. We're actually working with our IT department right now. So we have our GIS map currently of Parks and Recreation, but we're currently working with our IT department to create a more interactive map that shows where all the parks are highlighted throughout the city of Winter Springs. And then with that, they would have the amenities when you clicked on each one, and they'd be alphabetical. We're currently working on that. Right now, we just have a general map of the parks. We're working on something that's more, and it shows.
If I had a printout, I like that idea, because then people go, hey, where are we? Well, it's right there.
Yeah.
Go to number 2 by the tree, whatever. But I'm just saying that I could have printed out so that I could write on it. Because a lot of the things
Yeah.
is hard to explain to anybody unless since we're not supposed to travel together.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can look into it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, so any other questions for me? Again, I didn't mean to hijack your meeting. I was just trying to be helpful and make sure I'm communicating.
I think
with you.
there's a lot of people up here who are really concerned about the recreational programs and building out. I guess from my perspective, I'm concerned with trail connectivity, making it easier for pedestrians to get around, including connectivity with county trail systems and other city trail systems. And the other thing, preservation. I hope that we don't plan to mow down every inch of city property to build pickleball courts, and that we're also prioritizing staying a tree city. So I definitely want to understand the city's position, and to the extent possible, I want to encourage us to make sure we're setting aside land for natural preservation.
Sure, so we can control city-owned land, just to be clear, sometimes people misunderstand. If someone owns a piece of property and it's zoned for a particular use, the city can't stop them from cutting down the trees. We can make it very painful for them to cut down the trees. We can make it expensive, particularly for old growth oaks and things like that. We can make it difficult. We can encourage, we can give them tax breaks to not cut trees. We can do different things. And it's expensive to cut down a tree in Winter Springs for those kinds of developments. But that things like, for example, the boardwalk that we had talked about, and frankly, the design was funded. We had funded it, it's in the budget, but I think the commission listened to this proposal when they got it, the long-term plan, and they kind of contracted a little bit. We definitely have a conservative group of folks that really, look, we have the lowest property tax rate in 7 counties. We have the smallest number of employees per resident. We have we really do, it's been reported. Our budget's 25% less than Oviedo, but we run on the same population, 40,000. We're 10% less than Castleberry and Longwood, and we have 3 times the number of people. I mean, we run a tight ship, so we can't do everything without there being some offsets. At any rate, the boardwalk was going to leave all of those cypress trees, leave everything. And it was going to be built by city employees, not contractors, city employees who've been building these things, practice bridges in Torcaso Park and Troutwood Park. And so it was going to, the vision was like an 8 to 10 foot wide and meander through for sunsets and things like that.
I
And it would
love
be
that
nearly half a mile long.
Well-
What's that?
I love that boardwalk.
I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty partial to it. I am.
My son fishes, so he fishes off that
Yeah.
pier sometimes, and,
I have an
Yeah.
alternative
Attack
way
by
of doing it
mosquitoes.
too, though, but that's another story.
But we're
Because
still
the
talking
one-
about a lot of
the one
money
end,
Yeah.
in the
they
end.
got-
And so when we're trying to, and that's one of those things that you folks will be charged with. Are you going to set the boardwalk ahead of lower field lights or the connectivity? And that's what you are very specifically charged with. And so say we have $1 million in parks to spend in the next 2 years, for example, for capital improvement projects like pickleball, you guys help guide us. You know, a lot of that pickleball stuff came from this board, those things. So you're the residents telling us. And that's the whole idea. And you'll be charged with kind of weighing the pros and cons and giving us your opinion
and getting the backlash from spending money on this
versus
versus
that.
all that.
Well, welcome
with
to the party.
Water stuff,
Right.
Well,
stormwater.
You're not
all
gonna
that.
please-
I keep telling people that
Look.
when they say, oh, we're just going to take
Look.
it from the general fund, I'm like,
No, can't do that. Right,
doesn't
look, we
work.
run a very tight ship. Look, the bottom line is we can't do everything. And we're going to have to make the decisions. And again, remember the idea of what Central Winds or all of our different parks, what their role is. That role is to protect property values because healthy parks build healthy communities. We know that. And sorry, folks, we can do what we can. Like I believe it said, we brought $40,000 back in revenue from pickleball, but that doesn't come anywhere near nothing,
No, but
right?
it's bringing people to our community, which are then are going to probably go to Senior Tequilas or one of the restaurants around.
Exactly.
And they're going to hang out here, and
Or buy
the master plan
property.
is one of the reasons
That's
why
exactly
I'm
right.
here.
That's exactly right. But, so understand it is a losing proposition financially, but it comes back in the long term and generationally when we're all gone and our grandkids are here. Winter Springs will continue to be, as long as we protect our trees, we do smart development in other areas and maybe not so much high density, but really thoughtful planning. We still have a lot of open land. So we have to continue thinking about that 50,000 foot thing and be real tight with the budget because look, we're not going to do what Castleberry did and borrow a bunch of money to build park stuff. Once we have it, then you folks will be challenged with helping us decide how we're going to spend it. But we're not, I'm not going to be for taking out bonds and borrowing money to build skate parks and stuff. It doesn't work for us.
I think, like Jessup and the natural areas are the biggest thing that we have.
That's
I know
huge.
people don't think that,
Yeah.
because pickleball's a big draw, but, I mean, I moved here because I can go in my backyard and see all these sorted birds.
Yeah.
Eagles to, I don't know, chickadees, whatever.
Yeah, and again, Winter Springs is a bird sanctuary, the entire city. And that's why we have so many bald eagles and owls that sit on my roof and wake me up at night and stuff. But please, I'll leave you cards. I don't want to, again, hijack your meeting, but shoot me emails or my cell number's on here. Call me. And if you want to have coffee or something like that, you want to talk about it, you want more information, we just need to make sure that we're
Thank
keeping
you.
the communication between all of us and the commission wide open. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for
you.
all
Could
your
I-
work and volunteering. It's
All right.
turning into late night.
I have a request, or a question, maybe a request, to understand what the Parks and Recreation budget is,
Ah, yes, that was my.
so we know what we're working with, without having to go to a meeting. Is that possible to get for next meeting, or just as information?
Yeah, that's a reasonable request in regards to adding an item kind of,
Informational, is it 5 million, 10 million? You know?
yeah.
Because the decisions that the commission makes, right, if we recommend with the park doing this first, that second, like what are those costs? Because costs will be a big part of the decisions that, or our recommendations, right? if it's $10 million versus $2 million, right? The signage, if that's like $500,000 and the lights are enormous, and we're going to probably make a decision to do the signage, right? Or recommend the signage. And then the second request to go along with Jason is to understand what the land that the city owns is, because one of the things that I joined the bicycle committee was to try to get a way to get to the trail from the Woodlands, and I live in Seven Oaks, and there's no way to get there without crossing 419. You wait for the red light, but then you got to go through that industrial park or figure out another way to get there. And just trying to see if there's a way to, if the city owns some land, is to continue, just a little sidewalk to get there. So.
Yeah, of course.
Because the
yeah,
other
we
way
can-
I can get there from my neighborhood is to go on 1792 and almost get killed going to the Big Tree Park, and then I could hook up there and go. So I'm just trying to see if there's a way that you could just do a little connector to the trail somewhere in the city that we can make a recommendation for.
Amen.
And I know
So-
the county might be the ones that make the final decision if we have to cut into the county, but, to figure out a way to get that hierarchy of decisions.
So two questions. First, the budget is $3.5 million, if I'm without.
what was that?
$3.5 million
Okay.
for fiscal year 24, 25. And then those kinds of conversations take place all the time. I've been talking with the mayor of Castleberry, Dave Henson, who's a friend, and Castleberry's cut off from any trail systems, and they would really like to see, they'd love to be connected to the Cross Seminole Trail via Winter Springs. We've talked to Duke informally a little bit, just kind of casual conversations about having, if Castleberry does a bunch of their groundwork, and then we run that trail down like a Duke easement, which it runs through like the old golf course, but that's private property, but it's Duke, and then the landowner, and there'd be a lot of negotiations, and then that would give them access to Cross Seminole Trail. Remember, we have to have the buy-in of the Highlands residents as well. Do they want that? We
Yeah.
don't want to shove something down somebody's throat. We got to make sure that they buy into it and get the pulse of those
That would
kinds of
connect
things. And
434 with Shepherd.
what's that?
That would connect 434 with Shepherd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, those conversations take place all the time, and there's a lot of interested parties. The county would really love to see it, the state would really love to see it. They would love to see us continue to, all that interconnectivity, it's, yeah.
You know what that also would be good for is the school, because a lot of these kids walk to the school, and that in
Yeah.
the same area, they could have a place that's safer to walk.
And is the 25-26 budget, when will that be?
That's underway now.
Okay.
And so
And
I
are we on
think our
par
budget.
with, like you said, it's 3.5 million for this year? Do you know what our budget was last year?
Yeah, it's 20 fiscal year, it's
23,
October 1st, right? Is the
23,
beginning, so in 21, 22 is 2.3 million, 22, 23 was 2.5 million, and then last year and this year we had matching budgets of 3.5.
Mayor, we can also bring it as an item at their next meeting, kind of having an overview and letting them kind of look at it as well as an additional, so not just hearing numbers and being able to see it and stuff as well.
And a lot of that is really, you can tear it apart. There's personnel expenses and things like that. But one thing's for sure, I mean, that's a 39% increase. I mean, we are expanding that, and I think we have that buy-in from residents. But folks, if you think we're spending too much, that's a nearly 40% budget increase on our parks. If you think that's too much, if you want to see us cut back, let us know. I mean, I'm not being facetious, I'm being dead serious. I mean, that is a massive improvement. And we did, for the first time in many years, do a millage rate, a property tax increase. But again, 7 counties that make up Central Florida, we have the lowest flat millage rate. If you tie in fire service, we're number 2 out of 7 counties, behind Lake Mary. and they were able to pull it off because they have so much commercial space. We're a bedroom community. We have all of our residents live here. All the properties are homesteaded. That reduces that level considerably, what people pay. I think that's something to be proud of. We're getting all this done with the lowest taxes in 7 counties, so. I'll sit back down.
And I know we were talking about next meeting. Is it possible to also bring back up the tennis? And I know the funds have probably already been allocated for what the new structure was going to be. But can we also do a little bit of, I'll do some research between now and then, but bring that to the floor again?
Yeah, of course, by all means.
Yeah, I mean, I can create, if it's the will of the group here, I can create another presentation based on, I can go out there and we can monitor foot traffic on the courts for a week or so, and we can do a kind of a study to see usage, as well as going around to the other cities and contacting other cities and see what they have.
So like Christian said, for items, if you have anything that you want the committee to know beforehand, you can get it to us 10 days before the meeting, and we will have it, on the agenda for them, as well as any additional items. So like right now, I have an understanding of what we want: a budget overview of parks, that we want some sort of look at the connectivity within Winter Springs, and then we have a look at specifically the tennis courts in regards to just current tennis courts, or maybe additional, like all of those sort of things, or if is that, I mean, it's just kind of wanting to maybe put back tennis courts at Trotwood, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But at least those items for the
I
next
think we
meeting?
also wanted to see the city-owned properties.
City-owned properties, thank you.
Yeah, but. But the
Well-
next meeting is when? Because if we do it by quarter, we're past a lot of the things, like 4th
I
of
can look
July.
that up. Give me a second. If you're wanting to talk about 4th of July, this would probably be the best meeting to talk to about.
Yeah, that's what, and maybe we could add another meeting. I know that, because I'm thinking a quarterly, basically, we find out what is already planned, and then we can't do much if we can't talk until the next meeting, and then half, a quarter of the year went by.
We kind of prepare beforehand. So, I mean, is there something about 4th of July you would like to discuss now?
There was an option of, and I've mentioned this before, of having mobile handicap parking signs. You're talking $150 each, I think, as I remember from the last time. They can use that, and then the police can actually enforce someone taking one of those spots. Because, I mean, a lot of the businesses actually took that whole row up, and I understand, they want to have to take all that crap up there, they want the room. Because I don't think you're going to be building any more curb cuts anytime soon, and that, what happens is, I don't know, they moved the trucks back last time. Sometimes they had the trucks on the road, and then you have these big, trucks at the end, so no one will drive through, and then there's no way to get anywhere to other curb cuts except for there.
So my understanding is the access to handicap and the access to being able to get on the sidewalk, so curb cuts, correct, were the two main issues that you have for 4th of July?
I think she's asking it for it to be enforced, for those parking spots to be.
Well, they only can't, well, there's only 4 or 3 on that end.
More need to be created.
So, and I thought, well, yeah, you don't need to have 20 every day because they were gonna need 20. But they have them where they're freestanding, you bring them in, you put them down in those spots, or somehow being blocked in. But if you only block it, that means someone has to watch it because the police won't enforce it. These are actual handicap signs that are mobile. And that way, when you have a movie, what was it, I always forget the name of that park, the movie in the park, that time they might need more than just one. You just add a few of those, that kind of thing that makes it space go back and forth, because some people need the wider spots, but other people like me just need it close up and curb cuts.
Please let me know if I'm wrong, but is it that my understanding is that you actually want mobile handicap signs so that they can create additional handicap spaces
For big
within these
events.
areas? Okay.
For big events, right?
Yeah, just for
Events
big events,
within-
because if I said, we need 20 spots at this one park, you go, they're never gonna use 20. But most of the ones that, there's like 1 or 2 in an area that's not even legitimately a handicap spots anymore. And I can look and I can find them and show them, but they have a mobile mobile ones, I really thought they were great. Because then you can only do it for events, it's great, but then the police can actually enforce it. Otherwise, they can say, well, yeah.
So for the mobile handicap parking, it's something we can definitely look into, but, and we would have to find the budget for it as well.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is there is a handicap map, parking map in general, that we will be sending out prior to the event. And as stated before, last year, the vendors parked in the first row, which was supposed to be allotted for handicap parking. But this year, obviously, we're trying to learn from every event. This year, our goal is to close off the whole first row, and then we're going to have a city staff member there. Police has their own duties to perform during that event, so we can't rely on a police officer to be there because the safety of the event as a whole is our number one priority. But we are going to have a city park staff person at that area, only letting in
But they
handicap vehicles.
That's, they couldn't get there at 5 in the morning? Because that's what happened, it filled up way before staff went there. That's why I said it has to be physically blocked or that they will do it.
So what we're going to do this year as well is we're going to close our gates early. I think last year what had happened was our front gate was left open before 4:30. So attendees who showed up before the 4:30 time of when we open were able to get into that first row because, I mean, we're still setting up. It's our biggest event by 6,000-7,000 people. So it takes the park staff as a whole to prepare this event. But we will allot someone to be there by 3 o'clock, only allowing in
Okay, that means it's not
vendors.
ready
But then
before.
we're also going to close the front gate. So we're not going to allow anyone in the front gate unless they are supposed to until 4:30. That's when parking is going to be allowed to enter in
What are you
to
going
the
to do with
park.
the vendors?
So the vendors are going to be parked in the second and third row.
But there's no one there. That's what happened last year.
There will be.
But he said 4 o'clock. What happened to 3, 2, and 1, and noon?
That's
happened.
what we're learning from for the future event, was to be able to prepare for that for this event
By doing what? That's
by
what,
stationing somebody there at the event earlier in the
and
day.
not blocking the spots like you do for the grasslands and stuff. You see what I'm saying?
It's
That problem
absolutely
with
valid
staff.
point. Ms. Wiseman, sincerely valid point, and absolutely needs to be addressed. I agree with you 100%. Let me be clear here, though. There's a couple different things here. First, if this is not about handicap parking, this is just remember, as if you call me, we have a cup of coffee, you're a board member, but you're speaking as a resident. When you have your meeting and you have it on the topic and you vote on something as a group, right? The direction is provide better handicap parking accessibility during city events. That would be the direction. The nitty-gritty, frankly, we're going to let the city staff take care of. But that's not really the role, is specifically how it's done, specifically the meat and like the real details, what sign company we use to order the signs from to mark them as handicapped, right? I agree, we must do a much better job. We'll let the city staff figure out exactly how to do it. But I would encourage, I think that is a very important issue. And I think, and I would ask you, please, at your next meeting,
What?
make that something that you all vote on and say, yes, do that, or even, I don't know that
It's
you're
too
allowed to do
late
it
then.
now, but make sure that you make that as a statement from the board, because I think it's a really valuable and it's an important one. Does that make sense?
They actually did before, but never got to anywhere.
I think, as Michael said, we're going to continue to do better, but if this board goes on record, and it's set in stone in public record and it's in writing, you want
get-
much better
I
done.
think we did
You're missing the-
previously.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
We'll adjust.
so it sounds like, it sounds like,
After the last event? Okay.
it sounds like you have a plan.
The
Right.
plan is the same, it's not changed.
Well, it sounds like from what he said that there are some differences. There were some learnings, right? So it feels like as a board, we should as you stated, Mayor, let the city staff do their thing. And then we'll come back in August. We're definitely going to have some learnings. I think every board member should be at the event. You should understand a little bit of what's happening, probably touch base with you informally, whatever we need to do, right? And then come back, and then if we see that this is still an issue and it's a recurring issue, then address it as an advisory committee.
I will give you my word, the very first email I send at the end of this meeting will be to the city manager saying, hey, please, let's make sure we're on top of handicap parking.
But he's just
That-
said what he did was the same as before.
We'll see.
He did
I
not.
don't believe so. I
He said
really
something
don't.
different.
It is going to be different.
Leah.
There's someone there, there's some,
From when?
Closing
That's
the
the whole time.
gates
They did that
earlier.
at 4:03, if they still were there. That's why, I don't understand why when you get all the, what was
Can you
this
just
called?
explain what you learned from last year and what will be different this year, so it's clear?
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
basically what we learned from last year was while we were setting up, the vendors parked wherever they wanted. So what we're going to do this year is our police check-in for vendors takes place at our front gate. It opens at noon. The setup goes until 3:30. So what we're going to do this year is have a person stationed at our main gate, not our main gate, sorry, in our handicap parking area. We're going to not only cone off the parking ahead of time, just to make sure, and then we'll remove the cones as we get closer to the event. We're going to have someone stationed by that gate, so vendors are only allowed to come back through the second gate and park in the second row. Last year, we didn't have that person in the first row, and vendors came in, parked, left, and we weren't able to track down the vendors after that. So what happens was the vendors just kind of parked where they wanted, and police was at the front, and we were setting up for the event. But then the other side of things that happened was police finished their check-in at 3:30. They were done. They left. Front gate was left open. So people just started coming in as if they were about to attend the event. So 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock. Our event doesn't open. Gates don't open until 4:30 p.m. So people were trying to come into the event at 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock. And when that happened, our staff wasn't in place yet. So that staff is going to be in place earlier to be able to monitor people coming in, because we maintain the parking for, in general, for that main parking lot, and police does the parking for the rest of the park. So we're just going to create a better ebb and flow and not have that main gate open until 4:30 when we're going to start allowing people to come in, and we'll keep somebody stationed at that main gate. So let's say somebody does show up before 4:30 with a handicap placard, we can let them in and show them where to park, where we're going to have 3 people stationed for just parking in that parking lot. Police handles the parking for the rest of the park.
Right,
Thank you.
but it's, I know, if you don't block it, I mean, you block all the areas to keep people off the grass, it could be the same idea too, because it's always filled in. That's exactly what you told me the last year too.
Any other questions?
Alrighty, well,
so sorry.
you're good.
Just on the same line, can we get a report after, by our next session, assuming it's after the 4th, in terms of your view, in terms of what happened, et cetera, just in terms of how that all went, and just get some feedback would be great.
Yeah, so the next tentatively scheduled meeting is for, excuse me, August 6th. That'll be when, and we have it scheduled currently for 5:30 still. And so my understanding is that we have kind of 4 very valid points that we want to bring back up. Just to also further clarify in relation to like the city-owned portions or parcels, are you wanting to know kind of more in relation to the trails and connectivity portion, not necessarily all city-owned property, or how do you?
I think I would like to have a scope of what the city does own, because the point the mayor made is that, we can't tell private landowners what they can do with their land, but we can obviously direct the land the city does own. So I'd like to have an idea of the scope of what we own, including some of the stuff that's still woody.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. So, I mean, like I said, we have 4 really, I think, good hard points that we can bring back up at the next meeting. If you guys have any additional comments, documents, things that you would like to potentially add to that agenda, like we said, we just give it 10 days before, which would be, give me a second, July 21st, yeah, through the 25th would probably be the best. But I mean, the last 2 weeks of July, if you could get it to us, that'd be great. And, I mean, if you have any further questions, or would you like to discuss anything else?
I was just wondering if we can have, we're not even going to have 4 meetings this year. There's a complaint was nothing was done, but then you can't do any talking, planning in the middle of it. So I like to have at least the real 4 meetings, because this one, it did start the next part, but it really was more learn what the job is.
Okay.
Because originally, and one of what I thought was we were going to discuss the goals and stuff, but I was told it could be 4 or more meetings. I think we need to have at least ones that we can work at, and one before July would help.
What items would you want before July then? It's, the
What
reason
we're
why
gonna-
we usually do 4 is that it has, a relatively robust agenda. Then at that point, we can bring you guys information, especially since we have set items now, especially for the next meeting. That would be relatively a month in between 2 meetings.
From my perspective, 4 is sufficient.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
First,
Yeah.
good.
Then we won't be doing much of anything but halfway recommending things that we don't know is a problem.
Okay.
We're going-
Well, we've made recommendations, and now we trust the city staff to address them, and if they don't, we can see.
Take it from there.
Take them to account after that.
And we can definitely look forward in regards to if you do have issues or things you want to bring up. We can definitely look forward in regards, looking at what meeting is before those issues, whether they be in regards to 4th of July, talking to them at the appropriate meetings and going from there as well, if you'd like.
I guess, well, as I'm sitting here thinking about the meeting periodicity and everything else, when will we be able to understand where the city's going to be spending its money for the next fiscal year, and then our ability to potentially influence that?
In relation to budgeting, our kind of fiscal year goes all the way to September,
Right.
in the October range. So this year, of course, I'm not part of the finance department, but this year may be a little bit more difficult, but we can always set up for the next coming years and looking at those things and analyzing those things further, especially since we have an item that kind of goes over your budget for the next meeting, and looking maybe even to future things to kind of
So-
get an.
Sorry.
You're good.
This year's a wash, right? We got it. I totally understand that. I'm talking about influencing for the next year. Like, so would it make sense for us to have a discussion on what's going to be, where money is going to be allocated for the next fiscal year, next meeting? Or is it another time? Or is that part of our mandate?
I was
Should
like-
we talk about that?
When do you think that would be appropriate?
Well, so I will mention that our adopted budget is viewable on our city website. And inside of that budget does have all of our line items that are broken down by what our spending is allocated to.
Okay.
So, for example, we have a certain amount of money for trash receptacles. We have a certain amount of money for fixing like the playground mulch and fertilizers and we have different line items that you can view on our city website. That is a public item that you can view. And if you have any questions, obviously you can always ask Tristan and with your list of questions, and I can answer any questions you may have about our budget.
And I don't think we would direct specific line items or monies that we would just say priority-wise.
Oh, yeah, that's totally where I was going. Yeah, I'm not going through, I get, you have to do on trash receptacles. Totally understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're based on basically like one is repair and maintenance to buildings, and inside that we've identified items that we do on a frequent basis in there, and then just various different items. So if you ever have a question about it, I'm happy to answer any question you may have. And yeah, I can explain the budget the best I can to you. And we also have our general fund, and then we have our capital items as well. So there's the 2 sides to it as well.
Okay.
Additionally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, if you guys do want to show your opinion or look at things, the earlier the better, to let staff look through things, analyze stuff. If you guys, have a recommendation on a potential project, order in relation to that, always the earlier the better to talk about that stuff, just so you can look and see if that's even being able to be allocated that way, where the money lies.
Yeah, so actually, believe it or not, we do start our budgeting process the day after
Yeah.
the new fiscal year starts for the next year. We always keep a list of items that we're like, oh, well, we need this for next year's budget. But then our actual budgeting, where we start the process ourselves, is March is when we start going through the process, and then it goes up the food chain from there, and ultimately leading to City Commission for their assessment and approval. So we do start in March in our actual budgeting process, but throughout the year, we're always looking at the budget for the next year.
Did you say the fiscal year was October to September?
Yes, October to September.
Okay, and just to clarify, outside of these meetings, we can all do have our conversations with the city staff. Mr. Mayor, thank you for making yourself available. So we can't talk amongst each other, but we can do that research in the meantime.
Oh, yes, please.
So,
And I will also mention something that I know Mayor touched on a little bit was with the events. We'll do our best to send an invite to Tristan for all of our future events, and we'll send a generalized parking map and where you can park as the Parks and Rec Board. So we'll give you guys a map and kind of an update on our events throughout the year. So we do have our community event schedule, that is our calendar, I guess, that was approved by commission for the fiscal year, and all of those events, if you would like to attend or anything along those lines, you can reach out to us, and we'll be happy to make accommodations for you.
okay, thank you.
So we're only have 3 meetings because they stopped week before the other meeting?
At the current moment for this fiscal year, yes, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Unless we vote to have another one, is that how it would work?
I'm sorry?
Unless we voted to have another one?
Yes, correct. That would be one of those things that usually, we can schedule a special meeting. We just have to have content to go within the special meeting. So it would just be understanding what you guys want to discuss. But we could schedule a special meeting at some point if you guys wanted to.
Yeah, I was just hoping to get 4 at least in the year.
Okay, is there any other comment for this phase? Seeing the lack of public in the audience, I'm guessing there's no more public input. And we will adjourn the meeting.
Awesome.
I think you can use a little bit more force on that.
All right.